Hey, good evening everybody. It is Sunday night. It is getting late. Everyone's tired. But before we close up shop for the night, Angie wanted to do the Get to Know Dad. Oh, it's tag. Tag. It's not a challenge. It's the Get to Know Dad tag. So she's prepared a list of questions for me, for you to hear their answers. So here we go. My favorite food. I've got lots of favorite foods. I think my favorite food's pizza. I think it just has to be that simple. My favorite food's pizza, but I also really like a good apple pie. My favorite childhood memories almost always involve injuries. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's just because I've forgotten everything else. My favorite memories often involved also the veterinary clinic where my dad worked, my dad's veterinary clinic, playing in the yard or in the basement, building things, stuff like that. But one of my favorite ones to tell is when I slid down the rope of a rope swing hanging out the third-story window of a barn in eastern Ohio, and we had climbed up to the second hayloft of this high barn, and my buddy looked at me and said, "Dare to slide down the rope?" I was 9 or 10 years old. 9 or 10 years old. And I reached out the window. This is like more than 30 feet up in the air. Reached out the window, grabbed the rope, swung my body out, and started to slide down the rope. And things went in slow motion. And I could see little charred flecks of flesh clinging to the nylon rope as I was sliding down. And then smoke started to come, and I let go like halfway down, and I landed. So that's like 15 feet in the air. Landed on the swing. I remember bouncing. And the next thing I remember is ending up in the bathroom. This is my friend's house. Pouring cold water over my hands. And my friend comes charging in and says, "Dude, Joe, you cleared the fence!" There's like this big picket fence between the barnyard and the rest of the yard. And apparently I just jumped over it. But the crazy thing was, after it happened, I could click my fingernails on the bones of these two fingers. The rest, I still have scars all over the rest of my fingers, but right there was the worst. And it got me out of piano lessons for like 6 months. It was great. I don't think I have any really weird habits. I crack my knuckles. I don't think this is weird because I think lots of musicians and drummers have this habit. I tap a lot. I roll my fingers and I tap my feet. Oh, and okay, this is the weird part. See if you can do this too. And it's the most private way to tap, and it doesn't bother anybody unless they're really looking at the muscles in my temple. But if I move my jaw back and forth with my teeth mostly closed together, I can get my teeth to tap together. And I've always thought it'd be kind of cool to get a little microphone in my teeth so I can play music. But I can do all the rhythms that I can do with my hands and my toes and my fingertips, but I can do them with my teeth. And so maybe that's my that's kind of a stupid human trick, but that's my weird habit. So if it's a business meeting or something like that, I can play along to whatever tune's rolling in my head with my teeth. Craziest thing I've ever done. I've jumped off of roofs. I've climbed really tall trees. I've gone snorkeling in the Gulf of Mexico. That's not crazy. That was just really cool. My dad had this electric train set, and the electric train set had this transformer. You could had variable speed for the train going around the tracks, and I thought it would be neat because I was also a Lego junkie. And I liked motorized Legos and building machines and stuff with the motors. And they never had enough power with the battery pack, so I decided I would use the transformer from my dad's electric train set to power my Lego, whatever machines I was building. But I didn't do something right. And so when I plugged it into the wall, it shorted out the house and it threw me across my bedroom. And I landed. I woke up. It's up on my back with my feet in the air against a pile of dirty clothes. I don't know how much longer it was, but my hands were all charred and I had some blisters on my hands, and thankfully nobody was home, but that's when I first learned to use the circuit breaker in the house, because if I hadn't figured that out, There wouldn't have been any power in the house, and my dad would have found out what I had done, and I'd have been in trouble. There are lots of stupid injuries that I got that my parents never found out about because I knew that I would get in trouble for getting hurt, and I thought getting hurt was punishment enough. My proudest and or most frustrating moments as a parent. Well, my kids just make me proud. Proud of their talents and their interests in developing their talents, and I like that they always want to show me what they've accomplished and what they've done. I think my proudest moments are whenever they do or say something that makes it clear to me that they understand and are doing their best to live the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's when I'm proudest. But I also really like school concerts and plays and reading the stories they've written at school, or their art projects, or their Lego builds, or their knitting projects and their sewing stuff. All that stuff is just great. What do I dream of doing someday? I kind of gave up on a lot of those dreams when I had a family, because it was either choose to do a lot of this crazy stuff or have a family. So having a family, and I wanted to have a family, so I forewent a lot of these crazy things or interesting things or exciting things because I wanted to have a family. And that might sound boring to some people, but that's what I wanted more than anything. But something that I always want, so this isn't exactly answering the question, but something that I always wanted to do but never did. I wanted to take my steel drum. You guys know what steel drums are? You know, the sort of the Mediterranean island. People usually associate it with Hawaii and Jamaica. It's from Trinidad, actually. But I played the steel drums, and I always wanted to take my steel drum and go to buy a one-way ticket, a backpack with some essentials, maybe a couple changes of clothes, a backpack, and my steel drum, and buy a one-way ticket to Europe, starting in Italy because I lived in Italy for a couple of years. Go there, buy a one-way ticket, and by playing on the street and in parks, travel around Europe and not come home until I'd earned enough money to fly home, to buy a ticket home. I always wanted to do that. I'll never get to do that. But that's always something I dreamed about. So the question is, fill in the blank. Complete the sentence. You know you're a dad when? When you wake up in the middle of the night to your wife saying, "Joe!" And you jump out of bed. What? Rebecca's thrown up all over the floor in the hallway. And you spend the next half an hour mopping up vomit and soaping it up and cleaning it and doing more batches of laundry overnight than you have in the previous week. That's when you know you're a dad. Because your wife can't get out of bed because the toddler is tucked in next to her, and every time she moves, the toddler wakes up. That's when you know you're a dad. Favorite memories with my dad always involved the veterinary clinic, or going on emergency phone calls or emergency calls to farms, or into the emergency room, the surgery room at the clinic. And I saw some pretty crazy things, watched some neat surgeries, what I thought were pretty neat. Getting to help hand my dad the tools, scalpel, spanners, sponge, all that kind of stuff. I thought that was pretty cool. And he would come and wake me up, "Joe, got an emergency, do you want to come?" And I climb out of bed and go to the veterinary clinic and watch him cut open some dog and save its life. And or go to a farm in the middle of the night and help him and watch him deliver a calf. I always thought that was pretty cool. First job that was not paid by my father was when I was 14 and went to work at Burger King. It was the worst experience of my life. Absolutely hated it. Sometime I'll tell you the story of how I quit, because that's epic. But it was terrible. I didn't like the people I worked with. They didn't like me. I didn't like what I had to do. It took years before I would eat Burger King again. Now I like Burger King, but the job was terrible. Maybe I wasn't 14. Maybe I was 15 or 16, but it was terrible anyway. And Emily and I both, my older sister and I, started at the same time, I think. If you're watching, Emily, feel free to correct me. I'm sure you remember it better than I do. I've blocked most of that out. It was awful. Never worked fast food again. My favorite vacation as a child is my favorite vacation as an adult. Just going to the family cottage. It's a house now. It used to be a cottage on Lake Hamlin, just north of Ludington, Michigan, just off of Lake Michigan. So Lake Michigan, Ludington's right here. Go up this road for about 20 minutes to this little lake, man-made lake. It was a logger's lake called Lake Hamlin. We have a cottage in the middle of the woods right on Lake Hamlin. and it's just spectacular. There are lots of videos on Center Station of that beautiful, miraculous place. The iCard right there. Click there, and you'll see some neat videos from Ludington. What makes me happy? Well, my family makes me happy. They also make me crazy. But they wouldn't be able to make me as happy if they didn't make me so crazy. Favorite smell? This goes back to Utah. When we lived in Utah, when I was a teacher in Utah, it'd be early spring, and the alfalfa fields would be coming up in the valley, and I would have my windows down in the morning driving to work. And my favorite smell is when they'd be mowing the alfalfa fields early in the morning, like at 6 o'clock in the morning as I was driving to work. Just because it's so dry in Utah, but it'd be humid and a little bit foggy in the morning, and the smells would just sort of rise up. It was a wonderful smell. My favorite date I've ever had with my wife is a little bit hard because we don't go on very many. My favorite date on my wife, John, don't throw that at Rebecca. My favorite date with my wife is one without kids.
Doggy.
Did you get the doggy?
We got doggy.
So I guess my favorite one would be the most recent one, when we actually got to go out to a nice dinner and a nice movie because Grandma and Grandpa came and watched all 3 kids. Something that I had as a child that kids today don't have. I'm sure there are some kids that don't have it, but our kids don't have it. I had no TV. My kids don't have no TV. We had a television in the house. Sometimes we had like the Beta machine. That's like pre-VHS. And we get to watch VHS or Beta cassettes every once in a while. But for years at a time, my parents would turn the cable and the network off, and we wouldn't have any TV at all. We would turn it back on for the Olympics or for the World Cup. But that's it. So there's no TV. So my most embarrassing moment, I don't really have one because I don't dwell on those things. I was the student body president of my high school when I was a senior, and one of my more perfunctory duties was announcing the homecoming queen during halftime of the homecoming football game. And apparently I was like, well, none of the teachers remembered the last time a band member had been the student body president. So I had to set my marching drums down and take the microphone and walk to the center of the football field and make the announcement. All the girls who were nominated, I made my announcement, but I found out later, someone told me, that apparently the entire time I was making the announcement, I was flapping the arm that wasn't holding the microphone. Don't remember it at all, but people said it looked really funny. If I could go back to one day in my past, what would it be and why? My wedding day was awesome. The days my kids were born were wonderful. First time I kissed my wife. I would love to be able to kiss my wife again for the first time. I grew up in 2 houses. One until, I was 3, but I don't remember the first one. One on Gooding Avenue in New Philadelphia, Ohio, until the summer after kindergarten. And I remember that because it was small and there was shag carpet. But I remembered there's a grove of pine trees in the backyard, and I would go exploring in there and hide in there and dig in the dirt. And then in the house in Dover, where I lived from the time we moved from New Philly until I graduated from high school and left home, the thing I remember from that or the thing that stands out, there was an older part that hadn't been renovated. There was a food storage room down there, and I lit it on fire once by accident. 3 words that best describe me. Okay, I'm creative. I'm intellectual. And project-oriented. How do I want to be remembered by my children and grandchildren? I want to be remembered by my children and grandchildren just as a loving, supportive father and grandfather. And that's it. So there you go. You know me a little bit better now. Because I'm sure that's exactly what you always wanted, to get to know me better. Have a good night, everybody.
No. Like BB-8.
I know, I like BB-8 too.
I'm not afraid of zombies. Yeah, but zombies, I'm afraid of zombies. I'm afraid of